Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. This week we discuss all the latest UCI rule amendments that will impact racing next year. Tour de France finish away from Paris for the first time ever. We have an update on the B&B Hotels situation, all the latest cyclocross results roundup, including some big wins from Van der Poel and Pidcock, plus Cy Richardson takes on the Masters Cyclocross World Champs and loses his bike.
P6, Simon.
On to our main talking point this week then to start off. What has the UCI banned now? There were a raft of new and updated regulations announced last week which anyone racing in UCI sanctioned events must abide by. The ones we love to debate and talk about, the 6.8 kilo bike weight limit and the beloved maximum sock height rule, remain the same, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the side of the fence you fall on that argument. However, there were a number of interesting changes which will affect racing in 2023. One of the biggest ones is that the minimum outside to outside width for all handlebars is now set at 350mm. This applies to track as well as road and is the first time a minimum width has been specified. The likes of Dan Bigham and Dutchman Jan-Willem van Schip will be the most notable riders affected by this. Also Taco van der Hoorn, whose bike at the Tour had only 30cm wide bars measured between the hoods. However, it appears that this sort of position will still be legal. The 35cm rule will apply from the outside of handlebars and base bars, not the hoods. There were others beginning to emulate the narrow trends due to the aero benefits, and now a clear line in the sand has been drawn. Another key rule is that drop handlebars can now be moved forwards up to 10cm from a vertical line passing through the front hub for everyone in all events. This will increase reach for some compared with previously, and whilst that one will allow some extra reach, it will also restrict the use of longer stems. There are some on the market up to 17cm with larger lengths if you go down the custom route. Staying on the technical regulation of equipment, a rider's TT position gets another overhaul, and the position you can ride will now fall into 3 different categories based on rider height. Less than 180cm, 180 to 189.9cm, and taller than 190cm. I'm still awaiting a category though for riders over 204cm. Pinless pockets for race numbers are also now banned except in TTs, so the humble pin will be making a comeback in 2023 and commentators everywhere will rejoice. A notable addition to the rules is the introduction of a 15-metre rule limit on following team cars during TTs. That support car will not be able to ride right behind riders as we've seen in recent years, many of which are loaded with bikes in order to provide an aerodynamic advantage as it sort of can be created when a vehicle drives in such a manner. From now on, cars will have to stay 15 metres behind their rider, which I'm sure will cause a number of interesting debates as commissaires police that rule in the years to come. As always, let us know in the comment section down below what you think of the updated rules and let us know if you think they'll have an impact on the races to come. Before we move on to the other week's news now though, I'd like to pause here in the show and pay my respects to David Rebellin. The Italian sadly lost his life last week after heading out on a winter spin in the direction of Montebello Vicentino, close to his home in Italy. He was killed when a truck collided with him just before midday, the driver of which reportedly failed to stop and was later located in Germany. He was traced thanks to cooperation from German, Italian, Austrian and Slovenian police and reportedly has previous hit and run and driving under influence offences. Rebellin has only recently retired just over a month ago, closing a career that spanned 30 years. Whilst that career had its controversial moments, his wins include victories such as Liège, Flèche, Paris-Nice, San Sebastian, plus a spell in the Maglia Rosa. He turned professional in 1992 and continued until this year at the age of 51, deciding to hang up his racing wheels but continue to pedal as he always had. Personally, I raced against David on a number of occasions and was always blown away by his dedication and love for the sport of cycling. I had so much respect for someone who had given so much of their life to the sport they loved. And I just felt so incredibly sad to hear Rebellin's passing, which happened whilst doing the simple thing he loved doing every day. To all his family, friends and those close to David, we here at GCN would like to extend our deepest sympathies and condolences. To David, rest in peace. To cyclocross now, and the season continued at the Super Prestige in Boom and the World Cup in Antwerp. Aniek van Alphen claimed a big victory in the women's race at Boom. Not only was that her first win in one of the big elite cyclocross series, it was also her first ever podium at this level. She outsprinted Denise Betsema after 2 riders went clear on the final 2 laps. Betsema flattered, battled back at 1.2, but still Van Alphen was too strong at the finish, taking a great win, with Shirin van Anrooy rounding off the podium. Nonetheless, Betsema extended her lead on Celine del Carmen Alvarado at the top of the Super Prestige rankings. In the men's race, world champ Tom Pidcock took his second cyclocross win of the season after his victory at the X2O Trough Kortrijk. Pidcock was racing head-to-head with Van der Poel for much of the opening 2 laps, but unfortunately for the Dutchman, he would not contest for the win by the finish after crashing on a cobbled section just after the pits, later finishing 13th. Pidcock also went down but managed to get up and maintain his race lead to the finish. Lars van der Haar came in second, some 10 seconds back, and Eli Iserbyt took third. Fem van Empel returned to winning ways at the World Cup in Antwerp, the 8th round of the season. The 20-year-old took the lead by the halfway mark despite a number of small mistakes in the early part of the race. She held on though to that lead and distanced Puck Pieterse, who would go on to finish second, 34 seconds down. Shirin van Anrooy took third after crashing heavily on the opening lap and chasing hard for the remainder of the race. That win meant that Van Empel extended her lead further in the overall standings. In the men's race, Mathieu van der Poel came back from his crash in Boom to take an emphatic win. Despite suffering from a shoulder and knee injury, he soloed to take the victory. Van Aert started strong though with a rapid opening lap, but Van der Poel caught and passed his rival before dominating the race and beating Van Aert by 24 seconds. Michael van Tollenhout claimed third, 34 seconds back. Pidcock, despite his win in Boom, didn't fare quite as well, finishing the day in 8th. After 8 rounds, Laurens Sweeck holds on to its overall lead in the World Cup by 6 points over Eli Iserbyt. The World Cup continues this Sunday in Dublin with 6 rounds remaining. Honourable mention in the world of cyclocross goes to our very own Si Richardson, who despite suffering a slight mishap earlier in the race, managed to place 7th in the Masters Cyclocross World Championships. Valentin Koznier taking the win in Si's category. Good effort though by our man, fair play Si. A bit of work on the mount and dismount. We could get you a GCN podium yet. You can of course catch how he got on in a video available to watch on GCN soon. He even managed to secure some top-notch help in the pits. The UCI Track Champions League saw its 5th and final round over the weekend with a big London finale in front of a sellout crowd of 5,500 fans. In the men's sprint, the talk centred once more on the ongoing rivalry between Matthew Richardson and Harry Lavreysen. Lavreysen took the initial victory, winning the sprint, but overall honours would go to Richardson after he outpaced his rival in the Keirin. That meant that Richardson would indeed top the final standings with a 2-point winning margin over his Dutch rival. Over in the men's endurance category, the overall standing were also a tight run affair, with the Swiss Claudio Imhoff and Sebastian Mora of Spain coming to London, both level on points at the top of the table. It would be British riders Mark Stewart and Oliver Wood who would give the home crowd plenty to cheer about on the night though, with Stewart taking his 2nd scratch win of the league and Wood coming out on top in the elimination. All that though meant that Imhoff and Mora would still finish the night level on points. But it would be Imhoff who took overall men's endurance victory due to the fact he would finish 2 places ahead of Mora on the night's elimination race. It was that close. In the women's categories, Jennifer Volonté of the USA held on to her overall leader's jersey all the way through the night to take the overall endurance victory. Katie Archibald had a flyer of a night once more, another rider the home crowd had plenty to cheer for, as she took the win in the elimination and placed 3rd in the scratch. But Volonté managed to seal overall victory with solid rides in both events, meaning she held onto the lead by the end of the night with a 3-point advantage. Big mention to Chloe Moran of Australia too, who managed to win the scratch race, her first UCI Track Champions League success. In the women's sprint category, Mathilde Gross of France continued her display of strength, winning the overall by a 13-point margin over Kelsey Mitchell of Canada. Gross won the sprint in dominant fashion and then went on to take 6th place in the Keirin to seal victory. By the end of the league then, Richardson, Imhoff, Volonté and Gross were the winners, sharing a €25,000 prize pot per rider. All in, some cracking racing across the board, and we here at GCN are already looking forward to the next one. But what have we got coming up racing-wise on GCN Plus this weekend now the Track Champions League is finished? Don't worry, It's a busy one in the world of cyclocross, with Exact Cross starting things off on Saturday, which is available to watch worldwide for men and women, excluding Belgium. And then on Sunday, it's the next round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup in Dublin. It's the first time that Ireland has hosted a round of the series, which I'm pretty excited about, being an Irishman. And I'm sure there will be a few of you watching this in attendance. And if you get a chance to take a video capturing the atmosphere there, we'll use the best ones on next week's show. I'm sure it's going to be quite the party on Sunday. You can watch that one on GCN Plus if you're in Europe, excluding Denmark, Norway, Italy and Belgium. Mathieu van der Poel isn't making the journey over, but Pidcock and Van Aert will be there. And on the women's side, all the riders who've been at the head of affairs this year will be in attendance. So Van Empel, Pieters and Van Amerongen, amongst a whole host of other stars. Our documentary this week is an absolute cracker too. A different sort of racing to feast your eyes on as Mark Beaumont once again goes on the hunt for endurance records. This time taking on the North Coast 500 in Scotland, which he aimed to take back the best time after holding it all the way back in 2015. He had just 29 hours to cover 830 kilometres, which is simply savage. That man never ceases to amaze me. Catch how he got on in the film, which is available to watch tomorrow on GCN Plus. And I tell you what, it's a big one. On to the week's other news and transfer talk now though, starting with Remco Evenepoel, who has announced that he will ride the Giro d'Italia in 2023. People have been speculating about his calendar after an emphatic victory in both the Vuelta and Worlds last year. It'll be the first time that a reigning world champion has ridden the Giro since Mark Cavendish in 2012. And the last reigning world champion to win the Giro, something Evenepoel is capable of, was Beppe Saroni in 1983. A 40-year-old record up for grabs, potentially. Let's see how that one goes. Staying with Remco Evenepoel now though, he was also picking up the Velo d'Or award last week together with Annemiek van Vleuten. Evenepoel beat Van Aert and Pogačar to take the accolade, whilst Van Vleuten was the first ever winner of the women's Velo d'Or Femme. B&B Hotel's future is still looking increasingly bleak. Team manager Pinot has told all riders to search for other options as the hope of a partnership with a major sponsor continues to evaporate. And it now looks as if the deal the squad had in place for the city of Paris is disappearing too, as sponsorship problems continue for 2023. It looks like Mark Cavendish definitely won't ride for the squad, and one rider who had been rumoured to be heading to B&B Hotels, Ramon Sinkeldam, is now heading to Alpecin-Deceuninck to reinforce Jasper Philipsen's lead-out train. Pinot had planned to run a scaled-back version of the squad, but the announcement to riders in the previous week to search for other options isn't a good sign. We await further news, though, and continue to hope that the situation can be salvaged. Staying in France, and there will be a Nice finish for the 2024 Tour de France due to the Olympic Games. The race will end in a time trial and will be just the 8th time that the Tour de France has finished with a time trial, and the first since the famous edition, the 1989 edition, in which Greg LeMond overcame his deficit to Laurent Fignon in what was the closest finish of all time. It will also be the first time in history that the race has finished outside of Paris. The route and length of said TT is still under wraps, but what we do know is that the stage will most probably run between Monaco and Nice, taking place on the 21st of July, 5 days before the Paris Olympic opening ceremony. The 2023 Tirreno Adriatico route has been revealed, with organisers RCS saying that it offers chances for every type of rider. There will be a total of 13,800 metres of climbing over the week-long race, kicking off with an individual TT at the usual race start location of Lido de Camaiore. The key uphill finish will be the 1,465-metre high ascent of Sarnano Sassetto on stage 5. However, there are plenty of other tough stages, including the likes of stage 6 in the Marche region, which at 194 kilometres and 3,000 metres of elevation gain will see riders take on slopes of 20% during the final finishing circuit of the stage. Plus stage 4, which sees a climb with slopes of 7% to finish the day. Tirreno will run next year between the 6th and 12th of March. Last bit of news now for the week, and Trek Segafredo and UAE team Emirates have unveiled new kit for 2023. Trek opting for a patterned jersey with block colours on the sleeves and using a red design for the men's team and blue for the women's. UAE have switched over to French brand Pissé next year, although Pogačar will still be as recognisable as previous years. The design doesn't change a huge amount with the usual white livery, but the new addition of black sleeves, keeping it fresh, looking good. That though is all we've got time for this week. Enjoy the racing. We'll see you next time.